Yeah.
Jolly good. Right. So, hello, everybody. As we kind of said a bit earlier while we were having a chat, we had hoped we were going to be doing this, but we originally envisioned we were going to do this in person. But, when we had to kind of commit to dates earlier in the year, we wanted to make sure we had a date we could definitely put on without having to do some last minute cancellations. So, fingers crossed. I have said this before, so this should be our last Zoom edition meeting. We are planning to go back to normal service in person with our next meetings. Right, so for anybody who hasn't been here before, there are essentially 4+1 on the team here. So myself, Linda, Chris, Dave, who can't be with us today. I assume Dave will be in a bit later during the day, and Gareth. Twitter handles there, right? So two of us do work for VMware, but the balance of the team are, not VMware staff. And we're all definitely here to talk about interesting stuff, right? This isn't a sales thing. None of us are here to pitch anything, and none of us get compensated for doing that, right? So we're here because we find it interesting. We want to share some interesting knowledge with people, and like myself and many of you, we are customers who actually use VMware technologies. Wrong in it. Just some basic things, right? So we really want to make sure everybody has a good day today and gets everything they need to out of it. If you do see something that isn't right, something that something technically isn't working, or B, more importantly, if something goes on that you find offensive or you think could cause offense, please do let us know. Generally everybody here is a very friendly and well-behaved bunch, but if you do see that, let us know and we can make sure we try and put it right during the event, which is much easier to do. We're 2.5 years into doing everything via Zoom, Skype, Teams, etc. So if you haven't learned where the mute button is to turn yourself off by now, you should probably have a word with yourself. Conversely, if you're presenting like me and you can't remember to unmute yourself, like myself, please do try and remember that. Otherwise, people will. I'd encourage you to let the presenter know if they're jabbering away on mute. Audio problems on when we're doing this via Zoom. Generally, it's more likely to be your end, but if there is, if you think there is a problem, please do use the chat so we can try and fix it during the meeting. We'd rather find out during the meeting when we can fix it rather than after the meeting when everybody kind of looks at each other and says, what was he talking about? Everything we talk about here is really considered public. We do occasionally have people who use Twitter still and post things out there. So, just be wary, particularly presenters, if there's something you're talking about that you don't necessarily want in the public domain, please do let them know, or maybe take it off to a side discussion. I don't think we really have to worry about the fire alarms, given you're all in your own places. We'd use the #VMUG Twitter handle throughout the day. So some people still use Twitter. So, please do feel free to provide some feedback and some info on there, and we can have a bit of a chat, as well as using the chat session feature in Zoom itself. We do still maintain our YouTube channel, and this has been quite useful actually, where we've been doing these over Zoom. We've recorded all of the sessions over the last couple of years, so all of the London events are there, all of the national events that we've done as well. So what we used to do at the Motorcycle Museum, then the Space Centre, and then last couple of years on Zoom, are all up on YouTube. So and there is still a lot of really interesting content. I was actually having a flick through the other day, and even some of the talks that we've got going back to the 2013s, whilst maybe some of the technology has faded, there's still some kind of interesting principles and points that some of those talks raise. So if you haven't looked already, the tiny URL link at the bottom of this page will get you there, and I'll put the link into the chat a bit later just to remind people. I did have a look at the news. Okay, I have to say, given all the stuff that's going on in the world elsewhere, I didn't really want to dwell on news too much. And I spent quite a lot of my Christmas dealing with Log4j, as I'm sure many of you did, right? So if you don't know what Log4j is, I would really, really encourage you to have a look at the VMware advisory that's currently on screen here. Again, I'll paste this in the chat afterwards. I think it's fair to say pretty much every product from every vendor, not just VMware, in the world was vulnerable in some way, shape or form, and required some fairly urgent patching over the festive period. So it's probably worth taking a look at that. Also, given what's going on at the moment with energy prices, which is obviously linked to a number of unpleasant things that are going on in the world, I know I personally have had to take a look at this. I've always run my own home lab equipment at home, and whilst it's never been free, it wasn't, it was maybe not necessarily break the bank criteria when you look at how much it's going to cost you over the course of a year. Given the vector electricity prices in Europe are kind of following at the moment, I've certainly had to take a look at how much how long I leave things switched on. So I think I'm taking a much more proactive approach to switching things off rather than leaving them till later as I used to. So it'll be interesting. Maybe we'll have this as a topic of chat a bit later on, but and certainly anybody who's doing any of the ARM or Raspberry Pi stuff with ESX, interesting solution to having a chunking blade chassis soaking its way through multiple kilowatts of power every day. This is the rough agenda we have today. So again, when we do Zoom, we typically run a single track format as opposed to the dual format we do in person. After I finish my bit of blather, Duncan, who I'm sure pretty much everybody knows, to deliver our keynote. And then we've got a number of sessions afterwards. We are predominantly VMware speakers today, and I think that was really just a factor of people that were available to talk today. But there are some really cool sessions there, I think, that we're going to go through a bit later. So whenever we have a break, we're going to do it in this format. So we'll just use the, we'll just switch the meeting back to video. And if you want to turn your camera on, we can certainly have a chat during the break. Try and emulate as best as possible what we would have done in the spaces outside the presentation rooms when we were doing this in person. Can't get my slides to advance quickly. There we go. Given we're doing some Zoom, there are no sponsors today, so I don't really have anybody to thank. I did say earlier we're not here to sell you anything, and we definitely aren't. But one thing VMUG do sell are these VMUG Advantage subscriptions. It gives you a whole bunch of discounts across various things. But one thing I think particularly is the home lab point, anybody who does run a home lab, VMUG Advantage is pretty much one of the only ways you can easily get a series of VMware licenses to use in your home lab. If you kind of look at the price, don't do what I did when you look at the website, it's not $200,000 US. If you just read that, it is $200 US or around 140, 145 UK pounds. And that'll get a year's worth of licenses. So I mentioned earlier we use Twitter. Maybe we'll try and get a bit of a poll going during the day. Be interested in some feedback if you want to use the London VMUG hashtag of how many days a week you're going back to the office. Approach seems to vary for people's organisations. So some of the I'm never going back to the office ever again spectrum, whereas others are being asked to go back full time. So be interested to see what happens in the VMware community. So if you want to take advantage of that hashtag during the day, and then maybe we'll have it as a discussion topic during one of the breaks. So we have this perennial call for papers link, so the tiny URL at the bottom of this page. It runs all the time. We're really interested in people to come and talk at these sessions, right? I do think, as much as VMware speakers are great, and it is always really cool to get interesting content from VMware, I personally think a lot of the content we get from the community, so people coming to talk about what they do in their own projects, in their own lives, maybe some of their side projects, side hustles, whatever you want to call it, or what they're doing at work. I think it's a really interesting way to talk about what you've done and get yourself a bit of recognition, and B, but share some interesting knowledge. And we've certainly had some talks here that have sparked ideas in people that have actually gone on to be quite interesting opportunities and projects and things for other people. So if you do have kind of the outline of an idea, I'd encourage you to register on that link there. We can provide all kinds of coaching, dry running of sessions. You don't have to be amazing presenters like the presenters you're going to see today. I'm certainly no professional at this, right? And I make a hash of it every time. So we're more than happy to help you also make a hash of it, but in a friendly audience. And it's a really good way to start presenting and get into the community. So I said I'd be quick. So with that in mind, I'd really like to hand over to Duncan, right? And for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, Duncan's been around the VMware community since way before I was ever involved as well. He's written several books, hundreds of blog articles, I'd imagine by now, and is really the kind of de facto resource for some of the really deep dive technical content in VMware products. So Duncan, I'd like to hand it back over to you. Cool. Okay. Right. So thanks, everybody. It was really good to see some people. So apologies again, it couldn't be in person, but the intent really is The 7th of July will be our next meeting, which we are intending to do at Tech UK, where we have done all of our previous, at least for the last 3 or 4 years, London VMUG events. So date of the diary, Thursday, 7th of July for that. The UK VMUG events, so again, we will be back at the National Space Centre because they'll only let us move our bookings so many times, I think now. So we are still trying to track down the exact date, but it will be a Thursday in November. So it's probably the 17th or the 24th. But if you put that in your diary, keep an eye out, and we'll there will be a mail coming out to people on the mailing list once we get dates firmed up and details. But obviously there's a fair bit of time ahead of that. So best place to keep in touch is really #LondonVMUG or #UKVMUG Twitter handles. We all keep an eye on that. Failing that, email. And the VMUG.com website will have the events once they're actually posted and up for bookings. 2023 dates, I think, probably is a little bit ambitious right now, given all the hassle it's taken to get to this point. But all things being well, we will continue the same pattern. We will try and maintain 3 London meetings plus 1 national one. Obviously, this year we've only really had 2 London meetings, so this one plus the next one. But next year, I hope to get back to the normal pattern of 3 + 1. For anybody who hasn't seen it, this is that tiny URL /UK VMUG video will get you to our YouTube channel, which will have the recording for today once Gareth has done his magic, chopping the video up, etc. It's also got the recordings from, I think, pretty much all of the remote sessions that we've done there, as well as the videos from the Crossroads Inn, or wherever it was that we did the UK VMUG last year, and all the previous UK VMUGs going back probably about 10 years worth of session recordings there. So it's worth checking out. There's, the tech, as I said earlier, the tech may have dated, but there's quite a lot of soft skills sessions and things in there that are still actually quite up to date and interesting. My perennial please, we are really, really, really keen to hear from people who want to come and speak at one of our future events. We can do all kinds of different things. It could be a panel like we've just done there. We can do 10-minute slots if people don't want to commit to doing a full kind of 45 or 50 minute session. We're fairly flexible. So if you've got the nubbin of idea, just kind of get it on there. It enables us to get back in touch with you and try and work out the logistics and try and get a date scheduled. So it's really just about, the topic and at least a rough idea of what it is that you want to do. We can provide all kinds of coaching and dry running sessions, etc., to help you get there. Even if you're not the most confident presenter, we can certainly do our bit to try and help you get there. With that, I'd like to say a very big thank you to all of our speakers today. So I think if we can give them a round of applause, those who are remaining on the call. It always seems a bit odd to do this over Zoom, but everybody's doing that. And with that, we're at the end of the day. So if you want to hang around for a bit, grab yourself a beverage of choice and turn your webcam on. A number of us will be around for a while. I've got to shoot off in about 15 minutes, but other than that, we'll be around and let's have a chat.